Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. Happy to be with you here on a gray and soggy Wednesday. I was looking outside a minute ago and it looked like it had almost started to snow just because the water droplets are collecting on the trees so much. But it's not snowing. It's just yucky out. That is an actual word, yucky. Anyway, we got some great guests for you this morning, and we've got a few good topics. Six charges, six guilty findings, 3,509,591 votes. Vampires and werewolves aren't going to the Senate. We'll be talking about the Walker Warnock runoff election in Georgia, Trump Corp and Trump Payroll Corp being found guilty of all six charges that were brought against it in the Southern District of New York case against them for fraud. And we'll talk a little bit about the Philadelphia mayoral race because we didn't really get a chance to talk about it last week. So we'll talk a little bit about that. On the show today, I have with me Grayce, Sara, and Chris. They'll be talking about two different shows, and let me bring them up on screen. Say hi, everybody. Let's start with Chris, and if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hey everyone, my name's Chris Davis. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a solo theater practitioner in Philadelphia, and I'm about to remount my show One Man Nutcracker at Theater Exile at December 20th.
Awesome, awesome. And Grayce, if you would say a little bit about you, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
Sure. So my name is Grayce Hoffman, recently Carson. I just got married in August. And my pronouns are she, her. I'm a theater artist in Philly, and I'm also a marketing maven, hashtag Grayce Carson Communications, TM. And we are making a show with Paperdoll right now.
Great. And Sara, if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sara Vanasse. My pronouns are she, her. I am also co-founding member of Paperdoll Ensemble, and we're entering a reading for our most recent piece, The Pecking Order, hopefully full production next year. Keep your eyes peeled. I am also a visual artist, SVQ Designs, and do custom orders and things like that.
Awesome. I would like to just jump right in with the shows that you guys have coming up. Paper Doll Ensemble has Pecking Order coming up. Would you guys tell me a little bit about Pecking Order, what it is, where people can see it, uh, anything that you can talk about as far as plot wise?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Pecking Order is a work in progress showing. We're developing a brand new show. Our ensemble is a devised theater ensemble. So we create everything is our original material, and we generate it through sessions of improvisation as a group. And our inspiration for this show was the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And we decided that we had to make a show about abortion. And our source material that we really felt drawn to was Justice Harry Blackmun, who wrote the original opinion of Roe v. Wade, and his family. So he actually had three daughters and a wonderful wife who were instrumental in kind of shaping his opinion. So we wanted to imagine what a night at the Blackmun household would be like. And obviously we've taken some liberties and extrapolated and made it a true work of fiction into a tragicomic night of nonsense. And it's at Plays and Players this coming weekend. Actually, we start tomorrow. Oh my God, panic. Sara, anything?
Yeah, I just, we had been working previously actually on a piece that was surrounding debutante culture in the 1960s. And then, as Grayce mentioned, the overturning of Roe v. Wade really crystallized sort of what we were actually looking to examine in terms of the choices that women and women identifying people are given in America specifically, and this sort of time warp that we're currently in, where is it 2022? Is it 1967? We're not really sure how these choices have sort of come full circle in terms of lack of choices.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When approaching a topic like Roe v. Wade or excuse me, I do have a little bit of a cold. Excuse me to the audience as well. When approaching a topic like Roe v. Wade or any other political topic, oftentimes, theater companies come into an odd sort of space where they could be worried about, their donors, the folks that want to come see shows, etc. What has Paperdoll Ensemble done in regards to that?
I think our focus with this particular piece is examining the struggle of a choice that a woman has when presented with being pregnant, and when a person becomes pregnant, what do they do? And so it is, we hope, not too didactic or telling you what one should do. It is an examination of that struggle, that true whirlwind that you're in with what are my options, what is the best thing for me, and it's hopefully a conversation of what that looks like within a family structure as well, not just within one person.
And then I think as a company, we're a small organization, and we're completely female run. And in terms of like money and the financial aspect, logistically, we're an LLC. We're not a nonprofit organization. So as a nonprofit, you often are not allowed to take like a political stance, but we don't have that problem. So we are definitely not for profit. I mean, anybody who works in the arts knows that that's not true. But we operate with a lot of Patreon support, and then also through our ticket sales and generating interest in that way. So this reading is pay what you decide, but it's kind of a pass the hat situation. And we've been lucky enough to have Patreon support of people who give monthly, and they know what we're doing. They know what we're about, and they're actually excited for it. So I think that we're in a unique position to get really loud about things that maybe some other organizations have to be a little bit more careful about, where we can be really kind of upfront. Now, Sara did say, like, originally when we started this, that like, we just want to stand on stage and say abortion is a human right, like, for an hour. But that's pretty alienating to anybody who doesn't agree with that. So we take a tragicomic approach, because we really do, like, if this show could change just one person's mind, that would be like my whole purpose. So I think that we really are creating kind of like a family room drama that we never say, like, get an abortion. So we've kind of abstracted things from reality to give us that freedom to connect to the audience by making them laugh, and then maybe go home and think about, like, oh, wait a second. So
Well,
that's
I
kind of
mean,
our
isn't that always what the argument comes down to? Like, if you don't want an abortion, then don't get one. But
yeah, literally. Correct.
yeah, I've always been confused by the whole abortion fight. I understand a lot about Christianity, Judeo-Christian modernisms, but even Judaism finds abortion to be a human right. But Christianity, apparently, modern Christianity thinks that this is something that we should be policing. I don't quite understand it personally. Coming up in a Christian household, I was always taught, like, don't enforce your beliefs on others. Just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean that you should make somebody else agree with it. You just live a life of example. But I guess that's, like Christianity from when I was a kid. I don't know if it's changed. Um, at any rate, I'm glad that this is up. I'm glad that you guys are doing this work. And us like you know us small companies that are based in the LLC area, can really do a lot more than all the nonprofits that we work for and with. So it is good to hear that other people have that same thought process when founding their companies. That's one of the thought processes I had when founding this company. Um, what was I going to ask? I'm sorry. Again, my brain is mush just because of this
No, that's
cold.
okay.
Oh,
I wanted,
you
oh, go
said
ahead.
it's at Place and Players. When can people see it? You said starting this Friday.
So we start tomorrow. So we run Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 7 o'clock each night. And we're actually in rep at Plays and Players. They're having kind of like a week-long showcase with some special events. On Monday, they had a benefit for Ukraine. On Friday, after our show, is Run Boy Runs reading. So also huge shout out and thank you to Plays and Players for having us and hosting us. And we're really grateful for that opportunity. It's upstairs in the Skinner studio. So downstairs is 1812. Go see This Is the Week That Is. But then mosey on upstairs all the way to the third floor, right next to Quigs.
Awesome. Chris, tell us a little bit about One Man Nutcracker.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I like to say the title does tell you a lot about this show, which is it's one person, myself, and it's sort of a retelling of the Nutcracker the ballet and the original ETA Hoffman story, which is called The Nutcracker and the Mouse King, and it's quite different. So I have both of those in this piece. Um, it's I first presented it in 2019 at Plays and Players, where Grayce is at, and it was just really well received and everything. Very exciting, a lot of enthusiasm. And then we all know what happened. Time changed, and now I'm back. And it's 3 years later. I didn't expect to have such a huge pause, but I would say it's a very family friendly show. I had a lot of children, a lot of ballet fans come. It's like 1 hour long. It's funny. It's sort of witty, and it really does sort of try to embrace like the magic of theater in particular. Like what can theater do that other forms can't do? And I feel like this show is a good example of what you can do in theater. Like you can take a whole huge thing and you can make it with one person somehow. So yeah, I'm very excited to bring it back. I've got like all my nutcrackers like ready. They're in training right now. This is actually the one in the show, and I'll just show you this. Let's see, because there's a pivotal moment here where this happens. Okay, see, the foot came off, and I won't tell you how anymore. That's a spoiler. And so I just realized it says 2019. I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. I guess I'll just have to yeah, I'll just fix that. I'll just cross it out with 2023. Yeah, but I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Let me bring you all up on screen there. There we go. One Man Nutcracker, and you got where it is, when it is. Any things, any audience hints about any little background of things that you'd like people to look for?
I mean, I would say I get a lot of Nutcracker fans come to the show, and it does help. I would say it does help knowing a bit of what the Nutcracker story is. Fortunately, a lot of people have that information, or they just have little bits. Um, but really, you don't have to know much either. You just show up, and the show is like, when you do a one-person show that's trying to capture a whole world, it's sort of like it's entertaining in itself. Like, how does this person try to create this huge world? And one of the ways I do it is use a psych, and I have shadows, and the shadows really, to me, kind of like explode the world. And it's quite simple, but as you know, shadows on stage look really good.
Yeah.
Like they just look so good. Like I don't know, like it's not even hard. And the show it runs December 20th to January 2nd, and this time it is at Theater Exile, which is a space newly renovated theater, ADA accessible, has an elevator. I'm super excited to be there. And I'm trying to, as a result, this production should be a real big elevation in terms of production values, the lights, the sound, everything. So I'm hoping to really present what my vision for this show can be with a budget behind it.
Nice, nice.
Cool.
All right, let's talk a little bit about budget. Let's talk about the city of Philadelphia, where we all live and work. The city just recently assigned, I think it was hold on a second. I forget how much Councilmember Thomas city allocated 21.3 million to 13 arts and culture institutions. And then there is also I believe that's all referring to the same thing here. Yeah, the 21.3 million assigned to arts and culture institutions. Mostly through Council Member Thomas's efforts, and it is part of an overall $275 million distribution, which the bill is giving money to all kinds of arts organizations, including the African American Museum, the Mann Center, and the Calder Gardens. So that's pretty cool. I think it's an interesting timing. This allocation is part of the effort to stem gun violence here in the city of Philadelphia, and I'm sure you guys all have pretty strong opinions on how arts and artwork affects violence and hope in a city. Yeah, so and like I was saying, I think that it's interesting that the smaller arts organizations like ours can speak to political things and find a way to bring notoriety and hope, like I said, to various subjects. Any thoughts about like how that money will affect the city arts?
Well, I'm hoping. I mean, I think I was really excited by the news. I thought it was such a great thing. Anytime they put money into the arts in Philadelphia, I wish there were more stories like this. It just sounds like a good thing, and I do think it actually can in some way affect gun violence in this weird way, but obviously it's not the only solution to that. And it's sort of like I am surprised that it came. I was like, I didn't even know this was happening. So I'm really happy for those organizations. I'm really hoping they go and hire a lot of local artists and not, like, for example, people from other places that have long established careers that already, it would be great if they invested that money in like actually getting local performers, actor, whatever, writers, everything, but putting it back to the people that live here. That's the only thing sometimes I worry about some of the institutions where is like I've just witnessed like a lot of money basically going to New York or going to other places. And while, I think a lot of those artists, they need money too. Like we're all desperate. I get it. If we're going to have like a strong scene here, we do need to actually pay the people that live here. And so I'm hoping that's what they do. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think I'm excited about this obviously too. I think we all are, but it really speaks to the like preventative aspect of violence in that I really believe that one of the best functions of theater is teaching empathy. And that's true of a lot of arts and culture institutions. Like if you don't get to go and see and experience things from other people's perspectives, how are you supposed to feel for them? How are you supposed to be able to like put yourself in their shoes? And I think that that's a lot of what our world is lacking right now, is caring and being empathetic towards other people. So I think that that makes a lot of sense. And I've always said, as someone who has taught theater to children, I think that if you start out with that basis of an arts and culture education that teaches love and respect, then you're going to prevent a lot of the issues instead of being reactive with the prison industrial complex. So I'm happy. I definitely do have some of the same concerns that Chris does. You know, I'm curious what that's going to go towards directly.
Oh,
And
a lot of the expenditure is directly towards the existing organizations that always get money, but they did set aside 2 million of it for the cultural fund, which brings it
oh,
to
awesome.
5.5 million, which is larger than it's ever been. So perhaps a few small organizations might get some extra money this year that haven't been eligible for the cultural fund previously, but yeah,
That's great.
you know, interestingly, Republicans made strange bedfellows with us artists in a district wants to cut social studies classes in favor of arts classes. Um, yeah, I don't know how I feel about this because while uh, I'm fine with arts classes. We need social studies as well.
Yeah, what?
They go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other. I feel like, I feel like everything that Paper Dolls creates is based off of real life and observing and looking at history and taking from the outside world and synthesizing and then coming out with something completely weird and distorted. And so to not have one, you can't have the other. That's
So yeah,
boggles my
this
mind.
is Penridge School Board, and the proposal was made in order to meet budgetary requirements. Basically, I don't. I this is the thing that drives me nuts about education and K through 12 education modernly is that we like couch everything on these budgets where like I would love to see, K through 12 institutions just be kind of guaranteed funding like for whatever they want to
What?
spend. Like I don't
What a
know.
novel concept, James. Why would you want that?
I don't know. Maybe because I don't. I've always like backed education, but like seriously, like why are we trying to penny pinch children's education? That doesn't make sense to me. But maybe I'm crazy.
No, it doesn't. Also, like, what does social studies cost? Like, what are you paying for? I don't like, is there
Um,
really that much money in social studies that you're going to fund an entire arts program? Like, that doesn't super make sense to me.
I think that the idea was that they would cut one of the teachers and then
Oh,
change that for an arts teacher.
no. I'm like, what? Also,
Anyway,
I like arts teacher. Like what is that? Is that visual art? Is that performance art? Is that
well, I
music?
mean, we
They do
know,
it all.
yeah, we know that arts, like arts has departments in different,
Right.
professions, but not many people know that. Um,
Well, Penridge, do better. Just hire an arts teacher.
yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
how we solve this. Like, does arts organization or social studies, I don't know what, political action committee come in and just say, here's the money to run your program. Because it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's probably one teacher's salary, which is something like 65,000 a year right now. Ridiculously low for most
Yeah.
things. Um, but yeah, so that's I just found it interesting, and going from budget thing to budget thing, it confuses me why this is even an argument, why we need to, why we're pitting social studies against art or any, I don't know. I went to Clearview Regional High School. I graduated in '96, and I don't know, like, if you don't know Clearview Regional High School, it's in Mullica Hill, New Jersey. The year that I graduated, it was changing over from a very small school to a very large school because my year and older classes had about 300 students per class year. And the incoming freshmen were 3,000 students. So yeah, it was a big change. We had a lot of construction the summer between my junior and senior years. Like a huge new portion of the building was built, and politically, people fought for school board positions to be able to have the power to direct that money. And in directing that money, they switched principals from an arts-centric principal to a sports-centric principal. Mr. Mastriano, I believe, if I remember the name correctly. Not the same Mastriano
Like,
from
what?
Modern, but yeah, no.
Surprise! It was Doug Mastriano.
Right. I don't think it was actually Doug Mastriano because he'd be like in his 80s now, probably. He was in his late 40s, so he'd be in his late 60s now, but I don't think it was Doug Mastriano. Anyway, all that being said, he was very sports centric. He came from a sports centric school system, so he wanted to support football, soccer, that kind of thing. And a lot of the budgetary decisions for the board came down to his vote. So he kind of pushed the school into a sports centric direction. I don't understand why we pit these things against each other. The school had always won many arts program awards. They had the one of the top marching bands in on the East Coast, one of the top theater programs on the East Coast, one of the top arts programs on the East Coast, with an arts teacher who coordinated and got what do you call it, internships for high school art students with big companies. Like Perrier, one of my junior year projects was doing a proposal for Perrier. Like these are things that we need to do. Like, we need to give students all these opportunities, and yeah, we need to give them the opportunity to play sports or learn social studies or you know, uh, whatever. Go ahead.
No, I just like, why can't, and maybe that's just naive, but why can't we have it all? But I just get frustrated with like where they are putting the money, where it's like, okay, I don't know. Like, you're not going to buy that textbook. My husband is also a high school physics teacher. So and he's their union rep. So I have like so many feelings, but he teaches in Delaware County. And it's just hard. And like in Philly schools, I mean, you're making these choices that don't feel like they should have to be choices between like printer paper or, your kids eating food, like having a lunch program. And I just don't understand how that's not a priority. And then I like also kind of do, and this is my tin foil hat thing, that Similarly to abortion, like I think the whole thing is about control, and that people want poor, uneducated, a poor, uneducated population. Like, and they will never say that, but it's a lot easier to control people when they're poor and not as well educated. So that's my husband coming out in me. That the capitalist agenda is the whole reason for all of this, because they need enough people who are poor to be worker bees to further their agenda and line their pockets, because we know that a lot of certain people in this country have no problem. They could fund an entire, teacher's salary would be like a penny on the sidewalk. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I mean, it reassures me to hear these things out of somebody else's brain, because I think these things all the time, and then I'm like, wait, no, I can't be. They can't be right. But yeah,
Feels right though. Yeah.
yeah. Excuse me again. Philadelphia has a mayoral race coming up. Councilmember Helen Gim just retired from the city council so that she could run for mayor. She joins several other mayoral candidates. And I don't know if any of you guys has been keeping up with the current mayoral candidates. Any thoughts about who's running for mayor in 2023 so far?
Who is running for mayor? I know about Helen Gim, but I actually don't know the other candidates.
So we have Maria Quinones Sanchez, Derek Green, Cheryl Parker, Rebecca Reihart, Alan Dom, Jeff Brown, and Helen Gim.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know enough to say anything. I know about Helen, and that's the person I think I'm most excited about, but I don't, yeah.
Interestingly, go ahead. Oh, okay. Interestingly, I'm most excited about Rebecca Reihart personally, but that's just because I've always admired her work when she's been in the comptroller's office. And she always has some great recommendations for ways in which Philadelphia can cut its wasteful spending and also keep track of its money, which seems to be a recurring theme in the city of Philadelphia. But yeah, it's an interestingly diverse body of candidates so far. I'm not sure if Derek Green has the wherewithal to actually get through this race. He or his campaign, I don't know if they're actually separate at this point. Just I don't know what he's bringing war chest wise. If he's hired a publicist or what have you. Created a public letter about Councilmember Gim's candidacy, basically shooting down her candidacy, but with stuff that like really wasn't relevant, and I don't understand what that got him other than ridicule. Yeah. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, there it is. So Philly Mag, Victor Fiorillo reported on it. Accusing Helen Gim for having a socialist agenda. I mean, they're all Democrats. So I don't know. So specifically, former Councilwoman Helen Gim and I have very different approaches and visions for the city. I wrote and passed the Green Plan that cuts taxes, provided more funding for vital city services, and increased funding for police. Helen opposed me on it. Helen pushes a socialist agenda to raise taxes and opposes more funding for the police. Voters are going to have to decide which approach will make Philadelphia safer and more prosperous. I don't know. I don't think cozying up to the FOP is going to really get you anywhere in the city of Philadelphia. Maybe I'm crazy.
No, I would have to say that is probably true. And I just like, why is socialism bad? Like, can someone explain that to me?
I mean,
Because
he talks about funding city services, which is socialism. Either one of those platforms is a socialist agenda.
where it's like they just toss out these buzzwords. Like I'm so glad that all the elections are over because the like Dr. Oz ads that were socialist John Fetterman, where I'm like, okay, extreme left. Like anything short of center is like crazy, you know? Like Joe Biden is not a wackadoodle leftist. Like
Joe Biden
these
is relatively right wing as far as the rest of the
for
universe is
real.
concerned.
It's seriously. And I like people here raise taxes, like whatever. I am always so tempted to just like book it out of here and go to like Sweden or something because for healthcare, like socialized medicine, people are like, ooh, it's socialized medicine. And I'm like, that sounds great because like I had to pay $400 to go to the ER so that I could breathe. And that feels wrong. But maybe that's just me, you know, like why can't I just go to the freaking ER? So it just is so funny to me, these buzzwords that people toss around, because if you're not paying attention, or if that's something that like irks you, you get an immediate response from people, and that's all they're looking for.
And I think so segueing a little bit into Warnock versus Walker, the runoff vote was relatively close. The original vote was so close that it resulted in the runoff. There were 3,509,591 votes cast in the runoff election between Warnock and Walker. That's a pretty sizable turnout for a runoff election, and they were within 2 percentage points of each other. And I don't know. If you look at, I guess if you're just looking at the top level, you know, news bites of Herschel Walker, he doesn't even sound like a legitimate candidate. But then there's no deeper to dive. Like he himself said that he's not really well versed on the issues of the day. So what are people voting for in these numbers? Like in this high of a percentage? You know, what are the people of Georgia actually voting for? You know, like in Herschel Walker.
What a great
Against.
question.
Right. They're voting against. That's what they're voting for.
Yeah.
Voting against what though? I'm never
Against progressive values and what they view as being like, you know, the demonic socialism or whatever that they see. I think that it's, you know, people are so quick, and I feel like it's all part of the Trump story, right? Where it's like how we got the Oz and all of that, where people are attracted to the shiny things. And it also links directly back to the lack of education and people not being able to look at things with a discerning eye anymore. And I just think about it kind of is in reference to the whole school conversation too. This might be a slight tangent back to what we were talking about, but the idea of like, I remember spending so much of elementary school and middle school learning how to research things and look at primary versus secondary sources. And that being such a focus in terms of learning information from the original source. And to fast forward to like our current political climate, like that's just not, people do not look at primary sources anymore. And they look at the flashy,
I mean, that's the social
headlines.
studies courses that they want to cut.
Exactly. That's
right.
literally it. Right. And then we wonder how we're here.
Yeah, so there's approximately 7.8 million voters registered in the state of Georgia. That number could be off by several hundred thousand, but still, that's 7.8 million versus 3.5 million voting. That's nearly half of the voting population turning out. which is insane numbers for an off-year non-presidential election. And yet the results are 51.4 versus 48.6, with 95% of the votes in. That's I don't know if you can even talk about voter disenfranchisement at that number of returns, of actual ballot returns. If you're at 50% ballot returns, you're doing better than most of the nation. What are we saying here? What is the population saying? How do you communicate that, that I don't know. And I haven't looked at the by race and ethnicity results yet, but I would almost guarantee gender, race, ethnicity results say that 95% of white men voted for Walker, whereas like 0% of black men and 0% of black women voted for Walker. So how do we make this equally representative? How do we make this government work going forward when you have people who are literally voting against the idea of progressive values of treating, and let's be clear here, progressive values, at least as I understand it, is just let's treat all human beings as human beings. I mean, do you guys have a different definition of progressive values?
No, that's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But apparently that's not okay. Apparently we don't like that.
Which means you also have to treat werewolves with respect as well.
Okay. I mean,
Let's be honest.
I mean, I have a excuse me. I have a low threshold for excuse me again. I have a low threshold for kind of stupid things. So, but one of my friends, Rick Lewis, today, posted an analysis. And he was talking about we need to, like stop dismissing, these voters as just stupid. But where else do we go? His response to this was, Democrats would have to organize along class lines and make deep and powerful connections between white, black, and brown, poor, working class, and middle class citizens. Such class-based organizing was abandoned by the Democrats, beginning with Bill Clinton in his third-way politics that courted big money from Wall Street donors and could not stand in bold solidarity with working people and offer hard critique of capital. I think, we see that in, the union efforts that are very big right now. We have a lot of unionization drives going on, people fighting for group representation so that they can have some sort of, challenge to capital authority. Like if you work for a company, that company has more power and more capital than you. How do you fight that? The only way to fight that is to get together as a group and seek equal representation. Because ostensibly your group provides the company that capital. I think we see that, and I think I see, but then we get pushback to that every time there's an election. There's always pushback by the people who run elections that say that that's not a viable way forward. So what is the viable way forward? How do we organize along class lines and get people to understand that voting Republican is anathema to their continued prosperity.
I don't know, James. If we can figure that out, well, yeah. I mean, I think kind of like what Sara was saying, it just is so clear and so disappointing that it is like a malicious opposition is why, like, that's how it feels, that people are, it's not in support of Herschel Walker's values. Like, it's just not, because he come back to abortion when it came out that he like literally sent a personal check for one of his mistresses to get an abortion, like signed Herschel Walker with a card, a get well card. Obviously he's not really living a pro-life way. But that didn't seem to bother them. Like, even these blatant just misalignments with what they claim their values are that they're voting for, it just doesn't make any sense unless it is just with the absolute like brute tribal like feeling to vote against the other team, right? Like, that's how it feels. It feels like we're in a very deeply bi-party system, and they're like, that's other, and this is us, and he's on our team, so he can't do any wrong.
But then it becomes a question of how do you break up that kind of sports team mentality?
Less sports, more arts. Yeah, like, honestly though, maybe that's kind of why we have that. Like, our focus is so competitive and so individualistic and so like, I have to be the top. And if we had more of a empathetic and safe space for people to express their emotions and to learn about how people different than them are actually very similar to them, maybe we could start the next generation off on that, which I think they are. Gen Z is terrifying and I love them.
Gen Z is terrifying.
They're scary. They just have they don't care. They're like, they will just say it out loud. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, what are you going to do? Are you going to start a fight? Maybe. But I like that.
I mean, at some point, you need to have the fight, whether it's physical or not. You need to have
Right.
the fight, and I don't know. My generation is a disappointment to me. Yeah, I'm solidly of the post-millennial generation, I guess they're calling it now. The elder millennials or whatever. I was born in '77, so I'm solidly of the generation that is we were ignored. We were the smallest generation. Like the baby boomers ended, and we were a small generation, and we were just basically ignored. And there's very few of us in positions of power or affecting the grander order of things at this point in the game. I wonder if that'll change over the next 20 or so years as like the baby boom generation completely dies off, and there's actually nobody from the generations around us to take power, so to speak. But it is interesting to see Gen Zers actually jumping into office. One of the youngest members of Congress was elected this year. Yeah.
They have a lot of chutzpah.
Yeah.
And I think the pandemic in this really like formative time, it kind of broke the wheel, especially for Gen Z, it feels, where they were like, yeah, this actually doesn't make sense. Like this idea of like quiet quitting, right? Where they're like, I'm actually just going to work for, like what you pay me for. And I'm like, why do I have to do this in school? Like, why are you telling me this? This is just like a way for you to exercise your power over me, but actually I'm a person too. And I think this novel concept of them like insisting on being treated like people is like throwing older people for an absolute loop. And I love it.
I find in conversations amongst business owners and like between business owners and employees or like regular workers, I find it interesting like the generational difference. You often have a lot of business owners who are from my generation and older who are like, like the thing about Elon Musk cutting the food benefits for Twitter employees at Twitter came up a few weeks ago. So, like many tech organizations, Twitter would pay for the employees' meals so long as they were in the office. They had a cafeteria, they had, pretty good food because you want your employees to be well fed. And it's really difficult to get off campus and get to, a place where you can get whatever you want, or, the alternate, bring in your lunch. Now, I've worked for plenty of companies that didn't provide lunch. I've worked for plenty of companies that do provide lunch. I, as a company owner, provide lunch most of the time. Like, if I feel like if I have you in a space that isn't your own over a meal period, that I kind of need to, at least provide some sort of lunch. But that's not 100% of the time, but most times, yeah, I just, I pass that cost on to the client. But what I didn't understand is, like this kind of pushback from business owners that, oh, like mommy and daddy, like the business isn't mommy and daddy. The business doesn't owe you lunch. I don't, where does that come from? Like, it's not about being mommy and daddy. It's not about, at least not in my opinion. Like it's not about being mommy and daddy. It's about, taking care of the people that work for you. I don't know. Is that crazy?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm constantly flabbergasted by people who only see dollar signs and don't see, right? Like that that's a person. That is a person. You're a person. How would you want to be treated, right? Like it feels like they need to go back to preschool and like do it over. Where it's like treat others how you want to be treated, right?
Right.
No? Okay. Like did they skip that day or year? I don't know. But it's common sense to me in the way that I was raised and the way a lot of people I know were raised. And they just, I don't know, they see it as not necessary. But if the tables were turned, I think that they would be having a different thought.
I also wonder at the lack of empathy, which, like leads you to being, I guess it's jealousy. Like that's all I can figure is it's jealousy. Like, like I'm jealous that these people get this benefit, therefore I'm gonna down talk the benefit. But like why isn't the response just, oh, they get this cool benefit, why don't I get that cool benefit? Like why is the jealous response not give me that too? It's give, don't give that to them. I don't know. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think there's this like F you got mine kind of mentality where it's like, I worked my way up. I had to pack my lunch every single day to get here. So you have to like, it's like a weird tangent to the bootstrap mentality where it's like, oh, well, if we give you this cushy thing, like you won't work as hard, which doesn't make sense. Or like having college be free where people are like, well, I had to take out this loan and that, right? When it's not in equivocation because things are very different. Like the cost of everything is different. But there's this like, back in my day, I had to walk uphill both ways to school, and so do you.
Well,
right?
I mean, I definitely had to walk uphill both ways to school, but I don't think that anybody else should have to. I don't know.
Right, but that's the difference. Is like, I'm like, great, let's flatten that hill out. And they're like, no, struggle builds character, which is like this weird myth that they've perpetuated.
Builds the character of wanting to be rude to other people, as far as I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Just a quick segue. We're in the last 4 minutes of the show. I wanted to segue to the Trump organization's big loss in court. It's in the finding out portion of the FAFO. A Manhattan jury found the two Trump organizations guilty on multiple charges of criminal tax fraud and falsifying business records connected to a 15-year scheme to defund tax authorities by failing to report and pay taxes on compensation for top executives. So the idea, I guess, that the Trump organization had was we can avoid paying taxes by giving people things like houses and cars and plane trips for free, and then not pay taxes on them ourselves, and also actually have them as write-offs, which you can't if they're compensation.
You can't do that.
So anyway, the Southern District of New York, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has been prosecuting this case. There's many possible results, many possible what do you call it? Penalties that the organization could face. Unfortunately, the theory by most people is that they won't face the most severe penalties. But there's basically, in the Southern District of New York, what equates to the death penalty for companies, which is they could lose their corporate license and be asked to basically dissolve, which I think is appropriate. I don't know. I'd be fine with that. I don't know. You have, and going back to Warnock versus Walker, you have a person who, by all the boosters, all the people who boost him is a great businessman, who can't follow simple tax law, or actually, willfully violates, conventions of business, like overvaluing his properties by 300,000%, in order to get loans against them. And I don't understand why that doesn't have an impact. Like in my everyday life, and I'm sure in you guys' everyday life, if you constantly, overvalued your work for or your properties in order to get money for your business to run, and then undervalued that same thing to the tax, come tax time, you'd be busted, right? Like I don't know. I've been audited before. I don't understand why this plays out in such a way that he's a hero to people. Any thoughts?
Because it's a cult. Well, we really did. We got Paperdoll's got banned from social media because we were talking about the cult of Trump, and it was right around the insurrection, and they thought that we were pro QAnon cult of Trump, and we were like, no. We were having a discussion about how to bring family members or people we know and love out of it. And it really is kind of deprogramming. This man can do no wrong. He's a superhero and somehow defies all of the laws of any nation or logic. And I guess that's fine.
All right.
And I feel like that only adds to his mystique and attraction, this defiance and sort of I can rise above, I'm above it all. And then even I'm sure people will turn this, these charges into oh, well, it's all malarkey. Right.
All right. Chris, any last thoughts before we head out?
No, I just thank you all for being here. I've learned a lot. I'm glad that Trump got caught with one thing. And I'll say one thing is I really think, and I hope that we're at the end of the beginning of the end of the Trump era is my opinion. But, and I think people either going to fade out like real slow and then, yeah, thanks for having me. Am I supposed to say something about my show? Or no?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I am one man Nutcracker. This is me and my show, and this is another prop. It's a Christmas tree, sort of. And if you like fun comedies that are an hour long, then you'll like my show. So come December 20th to January 2nd at Theater Exile. Every 12 shows in 14 days, so a lot of options.
Nice. Awesome. Grayce, any last thoughts?
Pecking order this weekend, y'all. Free to reserve, pay what you decide. Plays and players, upstairs. Work in progress, it's like 35 minutes. So yeah. And if you become a patron, you get a free drink at Quigs.
Awesome.
Yes.
And Sara, any last thoughts?
I second everything Grayce said. Yeah, come tell us what you think about our show. We're excited for feedback and to see people in a theater for the first time in 3 years. It's a really big moment for us. And we're just excited to be in the same room with people, not via Zoom, which is a delight. But yeah, we're excited to touch hands and get a drink.
If you're sick like me, consider staying home, or at least wear a mask and don't shake hands.
Stay away.
Stay away.
But yeah.
Thanks so much.
With
James,
all
for having
love,
us.
stay away. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you guys, and thank you again to, as usual, to all of the folks watching at home. We really appreciate you continuing to be audience members for these coffee break chats. This is the last coffee break chat this year. Taking a little break for the holidays and to rest and recuperate. We'll see you back in the new year with more special guests, more topics of the day, more information and news that you can use. And really appreciate you guys watching. If you'd like to, feel free to support us via Patreon, patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. And look forward to having you in the new year.